Watching the Orioles, watching the Orioles, watching the Orioles, watching the Orioles.
Though you probably remember him best for his great coverage of the Nashville Sounds, Buster Olney can be found all over the worldwide leader in sports, serving as a senior writer for ESPN the magazine, on-air talent for Sunday Night Baseball and Baseball Tonight, as well as hosting a daily podcast, which, for serious baseball fans, is a must-listen. As ESPN prepares to descend on Baltimore for Sunday Night Baseball, Buster Olney drew the short straw and joins us here at Bird's Eye View. Buster, welcome to the podcast.
Sure, thanks for having me. I thought for sure you were going to mention covering the Orioles for the Baltimore Sun.
Oh, we're going to get there.
I appreciate that. Yeah, in '95 and '96, but I do appreciate the reference to the coverage of the Nashville Sounds. Believe me.
What can we say, Buster? You left in '96, and we win the division next year, so you're coming back now, and hopefully we'll win the division this weekend.
There you go.
Look, no pressure, but it's all on you. All right, let's talk a little bit about Sunday. Sunday's game will be Derek Jeter's last appearance on Sunday Night Baseball and also his last at Camden Yards. It's one of the game's greatest players and one of its premier parks. Is it fair to say that this will be one of the major storylines that ESPN will present to its national baseball audience?
We'll talk about it to some degree because it's the last time we're going to have Derek on a Sunday night game or on an ESPN major broadcasts unless the Yankees, suddenly pop up and put themselves in a position where they're going to contend for a playoff spot down the stretch. But let's face it, there's been a lot of coverage of Derek during the year. I've got a couple stories lined up that I'll discuss, but I think the greater story that we're going to be covering is about the Orioles and how well they're doing and the challenges that they have ahead of them.
Well, that's exciting to hear. We're excited here in Baltimore for playoff baseball once again. It was such an exciting time in 2012, and I think the city really got behind it. And 2013 was, again, a great season. That's 2 winning seasons in a row, and now we have our 3rd winning season. You're seeing this trend now in baseball where you've got several teams that went through long losing streaks, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, that are seeing a baseball revitalization and having that chance to get postseason baseball. How good is this for baseball right now to see this boon of teams that have been, perennial losers for over a decade now start to come back in the spotlight and be playoff contenders?
It's important because they have to be reminded that there is hope. They have to have some hope. And I know, just from the 2 years when I covered the Orioles in '95 and '96, and that was at a time when Camden Yards was filled every single night. And as you guys know, there was a period of a decade in which it basically emptied out when a team like the Yankees went into town or the Red Sox would go into town to become Yankee Stadium or Fenway Park South. But you knew all along, if you had covered the team in Baltimore, that what was happening is that fans were still following the team. They were still passionate about the team, but they were staying away because they weren't happy with what had been going on for a long time. And now they're back, and they're back in Pittsburgh, and they're back in Kansas City. And I think that's a really important part of the revitalization for a lot of these franchises and a big part of the parity that we talk about all the time.
Sure. Now, I assume that it's a bit of a whirlwind for Sunday Night Baseball. I'm sure you guys, fly into town, try to get yourselves settled, get into the different media outlets as well as talk to players. Can you describe for us a little bit of what it's like to put on a production like Sunday Night Baseball in a city, a different city each week?
Yeah, and it really starts, the guy who oversees it for us, his name is Tom Archer, and that preparation really starts 6 days beforehand. He lands on the plane on Monday after Sunday Night Baseball, and he goes right to work on it. A lot of us are involved in it. We're watching the games on Tuesdays before the Sunday night game because that's probably the most likely time where we see the starting pitchers that we're going to see on Sunday Night Baseball. And you get into that. I'll make calls during the course of the week and start thinking about storylines and start doing some preparation. You asked about Jeter. I prepared a piece, a short open that I think we're going to wind up using about Derek. and I wound up tracking that up in Bristol last night. There was a conference call yesterday morning. I go into the city where we have the game usually on Saturday morning, sometimes Friday night, and then all day tomorrow I'll get into Baltimore and be at Camden Yards by about 9:30, and I'll spend the day gathering information, and then we have a production meeting on Sunday morning to go over stuff, and then we're at the ballpark usually by about 4:00 talking with managers from both teams and getting ready for the broadcast.
Well, you're definitely in here for a great weekend, too, in terms of the celebrations that are occurring at Fort McHenry. The Blue Angels have been flying over Baltimore City for the past 2 days, so it's been a great time to be in Baltimore in terms of that patriotic atmosphere. However, it hasn't been a great week for Baltimore sports fans. We earlier had the Ravens situations earlier with Ray Rice, and now we have information coming out today with Chris Davis going in for a 25-game suspension due to use of amphetamines. You had a great tweet today earlier, and I just want to bring that up to people's attentions, and everyone should be following Buster Olney at Buster_ESPN. And you posted, no matter the circumstances of Chris Davis's PED test, long-standing denial of use followed by suspension undercuts rep of all clean players. And I think it was a great tweet, and I just wanted to bring it to our listeners' attention. Chris Davis has been an advocate for testing, but also staying clean. When Nelson Cruz came into the Orioles, the Orioles went to him and said, are you going to have any issues with this? And now we come to realize that, Chris Davis has been using Adderall, perhaps, as being an issue. Buster, we've been saying, the Orioles and the playoffs, yes, but this is what's going on. What does the loss of Chris Davis do to the chances in the postseason for the Baltimore Orioles?
You know what? I think it certainly has some effect potentially because he's a guy with game-changing power. He's a good first baseman, an excellent first baseman. On his best days, he's a Gold Glove caliber first baseman. You don't see a lot of first basemen who are that aggressive defensively. Is it as big a deal as it would have been if they had made the playoffs last year and he had a great year? No. He hasn't had a great year. He's hitting 186 in the second half. I do, you do wonder with the lineup, how many of these injuries can they withstand? Because they've already lost Matt Wieters, and they've already lost Manny Machado, and now Chris, goes down as well. And you're talking about on a given day at the beginning of the year, these are 3 of the 6 top hitters in your lineup, and that's a big deal. But on the other hand, given how the team is constructed now and given how baseball's gone this year, where it seems like every game is, 0-0, 1-0, 2-1, 3-2, I think the Orioles are well suited to play those games now with a dominant bullpen, with a rotation that's been so much better in the second half. It's not as big of a deal as it would have been in the past.
We're looking forward to seeing Kelly Johnson at third base much more often than Chris Davis. I mean, that's all we can say. So we're losing definitely some star power there and getting the AL East trade chip that has gone around for the past 2 years. Jake, I believe you had a question about Buck Showalter.
Actually, before we get there,
okay.
Quick question for you. Oriole fans have been used to hearing the Orioles are a good team, but they're a good team, but. And a lot of those buts have been quietly answered as the Orioles have kind of withstood the test of this long season. Are we getting to the point where, if not favorites, they're at least considered at this point to be a team that belongs in the playoffs and maybe one that can continue for a deep run?
Yeah, and I'll qualify my opinion by saying before the season started, I picked the Tampa Bay Rays to represent the American League in the World Series. So obviously I'm compromised in terms of my credibility. But I think as we go down the stretch here, I'm thinking that I'm going to pick the Orioles to win the American League and play in the World Series because of how they answered questions. I think you described it exactly right. Matt Wieters goes down. Caleb Joseph steps up, the pride of Lipscomb, and he's become such a great player for them. The highest rate of throwing out runners for any catcher with at least 46 attempts. We go into the second half. What's the state of their starting rotation? And Chris Tillman's gotten better, and Gossman's gotten better. Gonzalez, on down the line. They just have answered a lot of questions, as you described. And I do think that it means something that not only do they have a deep bullpen, but I think there are 2 managers in baseball that are head and shoulders above the others in terms of running a bullpen. And Buck Showalter's one, and Bruce Bochy of the Giants is the other. And now that they have all these weapons with the addition of Andrew Miller, that's a great team. Now, do I look at them as being prohibitive favorites? No, because I don't necessarily think that there's a team that's head and shoulders above all the others in the American League, but I think I'm going to wind up picking them to represent the American League.
Yeah, don't feel bad. We actually predicted that Tampa Bay was going to win this division as well. So that's coming from an Orioles podcast, so that just tells you how wrong we all were. Let's come back to Buck Showalter and end it on this. Buck Showalter spent several years working at ESPN as an analyst for Baseball Tonight, and one of the things Baltimore fans have noticed is we're treated to certain Buckisms, where he recounts a story or historical nugget that he was just thinking about recently, and sometimes they don't have anything baseball-related at all. Do you have something in your head that it might be a Buckism that makes you raise your eyebrows a little bit at him, but you look at him and say, man, this guy's really smart?
Oh, my goodness. Without a doubt. And the thing about Buck is that you could be having a conversation with him, and at the same time he's watching a game, and at the same time he's thinking about something else. I've only got a one-track brain. He's got about 4 or 5 different tracks, it seems like, because all of a sudden, in the midst of a conversation, he'll say, hey, did you ever notice that so-and-so and so-and-so? And you look at him, and you're like, where did that come from? And, certainly out of left field. And Buck and I, have this, you mentioned the Nashville Sounds. We actually have a link through that because he holds just about every record set for the Nashville Sounds offensively when he was playing Double-A there, which, of course, as he fully acknowledges, is kind of a dubious thing. You don't want to be holding accumulation records for a Double-A team. He'll pop up, and because of that connection, he'll pop up and say, hey, what's Larry Schmittou up to? And I remember when Schmittou did this, and this. He was a former owner of the Nashville Sounds. Absolutely. It's one of the reasons why, Tim Kirkson and I talk about this all the time. One of our favorite things to do at ESPN was to watch games with Buck, because he would just see things that you wouldn't see. We'd all be watching the exact same game, but then he'd say, hey, did you notice the pitcher didn't bother covering up third base on that play? And they'd run the replay, and sure enough, there it was. And it really spoke to, how in-depth he saw the game.
That's fantastic. I got to be honest, I didn't know much about Buck Showalter before he got to town, and it has just been such a pleasure to not only have him manage a winning club, but to get to see him on a daily basis at the post-game pressers, at other opportunities to hear him speak, because not only is he a clever, funny guy, but he's also a guy who's worked very hard to become one of us, to become a part of the Orioles organization and a part of the Baltimore community. And man, he's just been a pleasure to be around.
Oh, no question. Before he took that job, because he knew that I had covered the Orioles, and I, know the lay of the land within the organization. I know Peter Angelos well, and so we had a lot of conversations about that. And you knew he would do well. And that's one thing. You mentioned Buck in a press conference. There are, and you guys will, I'm sure, agree with me on this, there are about 5 or 6 layers, it seems like, on each of Buck's answers, where you look at his words and their face value, but then you always have to ask yourself, okay, what's he really trying to say here? Which, again, speaks to his intelligence.
Absolutely. The other funny thing about Buck in a post-game presser is that every couple of nights you're treated to sassy Buck when he doesn't get a question that he likes very much. So that's always entertaining to listen to. Well, hey, Buster, we really appreciate the time that you've taken with us today. I know you got 1.5 million to do between now and the time that Sunday Night Baseball airs. First, thanks for coming on the podcast. Second, make sure that you take in some of those sights and sounds Scott talked about with the Blue Angels and some of the Star Spangled Spectacular stuff going on. It should be a lot of fun. And if I could just quote another great podcaster, hey, Buster, thanks for doing this.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So again, everyone, you can follow Buster Olney on Twitter at Buster_ESPN. Go follow him on his blog on ESPN.com. And again, tune in Sunday night to Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN, where the Yankees and the Orioles go against each other, maybe for the Orioles' chance of clinching the division. Otherwise, well, we get to give a picture of Jeffrey Mayer away to Derek Jeter as the going-away gift.
All right, Buster, we're gonna close it there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for asking.
Bird's Eye View is a member of the Baltimore Sports Report Network. Find more podcasts like this at BaltimoreSportsReport.com. BaltimoreSportsReport.com.